Where them Catholics at? Yeah. Yo, where them Catholics at? Man, what's the matter with these bishops?
And welcome back, everybody. It's the Catholic Convert Show. And it's beautiful Monday, September 9th, 2024, the day after our Blessed Mother's birthday. And it's a good day to come at you with some mind-bending concepts. And when I say mind-bending concepts, I mean nothing at all, because this is a very poorly produced and unintelligent show. But here we are anyway. Ed, what's going on, brother?
Not much. It's a gorgeous day up here in Jersey. Low 70s, no humidity, brilliant blue skies. We've been on a roll with the weather for like a week and a half now. Doesn't show signs of stopping. So I am a happy camper.
Yeah, I'm cautious about it here, man. You know, we have a false fall. We're like, oh, great. We can start closing up the pool and we can start breaking out some of the cool weather gear, because everything's going to be, you know, low 50s in the morning. So it's like, all right, I might need a hoodie. I might need a sweater. And then we'll have a random week where everything's like 80 as a low. I was like, hopefully it doesn't happen this year. We have false springs all the time, but I'm getting sick of false falls, man. I'm tired of the heat.
I hear you. Well, it's going to get warm again at the end of the week here. It's going to be in low 80s, but which is where we typically would be this time of year anyway. But for now, I'm going to enjoy it.
Yeah, I got you. Tell you one thing I did this weekend. I went on a movie binge and I started watching all of the old Westerns that I watched with my uncle when I was a kid. My uncle was a huge fan of the Louis L'Amour, Clive Cussler, you know, all the old Western books. You know, was it Jeremiah Johnson, right? I've probably seen every single Clint Eastwood Western 1,000 times. Yeah. Same with most of the John Waynes. Grew up watching Chuck Connors as the rifleman, Bonanza, and Gunsmoke. And I was like, you know what? I need to introduce my my younger ones to the Westerns, right? So we started it off with Paul Newman, Robert Redford, Butch Cassidy, and the Sundance Kid.
It's a good way to work your way into it.
Great flick.
It's funny.
But what was funny is by the end of it, my kids were asking me, how come none of these Westerns ever have like a happy ending? It's like every single one of them ends tragically and sad. You don't ever get the ending you want. No. Like, it's kind of the theme, you know, but
they reflect life.
They do. They reflect life. And, you know, I was kind of wondering, like, I can't think of any other culture except for the Japanese, because the Japanese are huge about Westerns. But I can't think of any other culture other than American culture that is so fascinated with like the Western genre, right?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the Japanese are nuts about Westerns.
Oh, yeah. Yes, they are.
There's this one kid that I was following for a long time. He might have been in his 30s, but he looked like he was 16. He was just a monster, you know, doing like trick pistol and spinning and I guess twirling. I don't know what it's called.
Yeah,
but it was nuts. But I was wondering, I was like, why are Americans in general, and especially men, obsessed with Westerns? Because if you think about just about every single movie that appeals to a man, whether it's, you know, Rambo, First Blood, The Matrix, whatever it is, there's a Western undertone to it, right? That there's that one lone guy or those group of dudes that show up, and it's this there's a heroic archetype. It's ultimately a battle of good versus evil, right? In the end of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at it. I mean, It's the vast majority of the guys in westerns, aren't they like uh, the manliest men that you've ever seen in your life? You know,
They are, but they're
they
also deeply flawed too.
but yeah, but I think people, when that's what makes them relatable, though. Here's this guy rides into town. First of all, any guy with a gun strapped to his side is going to be cool. You know, the outfits are awesome. I dress like that all the time. You know what I mean? And
It's right
when I'm
next
not,
to your poncho.
I, listen, I have my black Sunday go to church cowboy hat. I got my tan everyday cowboy hat. I'm ready to go. But you see, you got a gun strapped to you. The outfits are cool as hell. You got the cowboy boots. You're either saving somebody's life, you're saving a damsel in distress. You know, it's great. You're rustling cattle. You're poking them doggies, whatever that means. And listen, it's 2024, and one of my favorite things to do all through the summer is to go to the nation's longest running rodeo, which is of course located here in New Jersey, Cowtown Rodeo. Been going since 1938, and there's just something so cool. You got sheriffs, you got marshals. You know, they're just like they're rough and tough, and they're living off of beans cooked over a fire. It's just a cool lifestyle. I get it.
It is. And I think some of it comes from, it's the myth of the frontier, right?
Yeah.
Because all Westerns romanticize the idea of this place where people can reinvent themselves and
Mhm.
escape the constraints of society. It's this open and untamed land that symbolizes freedom, right?
Yeah.
And there's the very American element of that rugged individualism, right?
Mhm.
Because I've got a friend who is a former therapist, and he's always talked about how the differences between male therapy and female therapy are. Women want to feel loved, men want to feel powerful, right?
Mhm.
If you ever find a man who is depressed or anxious, whatever, it's because he feels like the underlying most base part of it all is he feels like he's been robbed of his personal agency, where he's got zero control or power over his own life, right? So I was thinking about how that might, because this is what normal people do. I was thinking of how that might compare to Catholicism.
Mhm.
And I went down this autistic level of detail rabbit hole. And I realized Catholicism is a Western.
Okay.
Because think about the archetypal Western hero: virtuous,
Yeah.
searching for redemption because he's deeply flawed. And there's always some form of sacrifice involved,
Sure.
right? And so, I mean, these are very surface level elements of it, but they do resonate and they hint at something that's a little deeper. So, a cowboy has a code, right? The outlaw, even the outlaws in Westerns have codes. There's some things in lines they just won't cross, right? Now, most Westerns are always set, and when I think of it, I'm immediately thinking of the Magnificent Seven. And yes, for all the film nerds listening, I know that Akira Kurosawa, Seven Samurai, is where they got the idea from that from. Like I said, the Japanese love Westerns, right?
Yeah.
But in the Westerns, the cowboy or the protagonist, he kind of stands apart away from all the different corrupt systems around him. And he's seeking to right wrongs, defend the vulnerable, even when it comes at a personal cost, right? And it's very similar to Catholicism, where we have to adhere to these objective moral truths because they're rooted in God's commandments. And most of the time, they're in direct conflict with the world, right? But it's more than that. It's more than just this comparison between like the cowboy's got his honors and his virtue and his principles, with the moral alignment of what we have as Catholics, or what we strive for as Catholics, I should say. But it kind of points to the very structure of reality itself, because every moral act participates in the divine order that is above the material and secular world that we live in. If that makes any sense to you.
Sure, absolutely.
Because, I mean, think about it. The cowboy's this solitary figure. He's navigating the wild frontier. He's looking for peace. He's looking for justice or redemption. And usually there's one of those things is kind of the primary in the Western story, right?
Yeah.
But so he's out there on this rough, barren frontier. He's in the wilderness. Well, in Catholicism, the wilderness is usually representative of a spiritual exile, right? In particular, the spiritual exile that we experience due to Adam and Eve's fall from grace and original sin. So our souls were estranged from God, and we have to travel through this spiritual desert in a falling world. And the only thing we're doing this entire time is seeking communion with the divine. And that's where we find truth. That's where we find peace. That's where we find redemption. And that's where we find justice. And you know how you've mentioned several times on this show that, and this is part of what led me down the rabbit hole. You've talked about several times how children are born. We are born knowing that there's a God.
Yeah.
And we are just inherently drawn to finding him.
Absolutely.
And being close to him. Even if it comes from, or if it comes down to later that there's a rejection of God because it just doesn't fit our jaded attitudes or whatever. But that's what I'm talking about here. The cowboy in the Western theme or in the Western genres, he's drawn to just getting away from everything. He goes, all I need is stars for a blanket, the ground for a bed, and a good horse. Right?
Yeah.
That's all he needs. It's what he's drawn to, because it's just empty. It's free. It's free of all the nihilistic and hedonistic lifestyle and the corruption, because it's just out there in the midst of God's creation. Right?
Yeah.
And that's how we are. The only thing we need is Jesus Christ, which is why we spend so much time in front of the Blessed Sacrament. That's why we're I don't know about you, but for me, I feel an ache inside if I haven't received communion.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Like I need it. I want it. I'm hungering for it. And it's not even something that I can really describe. Right. But I've told you the story about my past, where during the time of my conversion, the thing that held me back was feeling like, why would God even give me a chance? Why would, am I too far gone for God to forgive me at all?
Yeah.
Right. Because I spent most of my life in open opposition against him, or at least indifference to him. Right. And so in almost all the Westerns, the protagonist, the Western hero, they're almost always haunted by their past mistakes, and they carry with them the full weight of all of their flaws. So on the screen or in the book, the redemption that they're seeking on the surface is usually just the restoration of their reputation. Right. But there's this underlying tone they're seeking something deeper, a transformation of who they are at their core. So in Catholic theology, it's that redemption is more about it's about more than just moral reformation. It's about completely reordering our souls to return to the state of grace that we lost through original sin.
Yeah.
And then that almost always comes down with an act of self-sacrifice. You know, if I think to what's his name? In the Magnificent Seven, one of the guys, he sacrifices himself.
Yeah. I know. I'm trying to think.
You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, great movie.
In the remake, it was the one that's not all that great. Chris Pratt plays him. He blows himself up with a stick of dynamite.
Yeah.
But it's not the greatest of remakes. It's tolerable, but it's not the greatest. Yeah. But when we come to Christ, we have to sacrifice all of what we've become to be who we're supposed to be.
Yeah.
You know, and that kind of mirrors the Paschal mystery, where Christ's suffering, death, and resurrection are the ultimate acts of a self-giving love. And so when the Cowboys self-sacrifice, it does more than just reflect Christ's moral victory. It symbolizes salvation itself.
Yeah. No, I get exactly what you're going for there, and I grew up on, I'm just barely slightly older than you, and I grew up towards the tail end of the heyday of the whole cowboy genre of movies and TV shows and all that fun stuff. And
were allowed, when you were a kid, you were allowed to play cowboys and Indians.
Oh my gosh.
And you didn't have to change it to livestock management personnel and indigenous peoples.
No, I didn't. And I mean, I wish I still had them because they'd be worth a ton of money, but I had a million.
You got your Buck Rogers laser gun still in the closet?
Maybe, but all all the different cap guns and all that kind of stuff we had. I had holsters, and I could share a picture of myself with my cowboy hat and my holster and stuff on when I was young. But I was so young in the picture that I'm
this
actually
is 8 weeks ago.
Well, I don't want to say that, but it's true. But if you look at and I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination that if you look at the Clint Eastwood movies, all the spaghetti westerns, that he was a perfect guy. He certainly was very flawed. But you talk about the self-sacrifice and stuff. What would typically happen in one of those movies? Hang 'em High, High Plains Drifter, Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I mean, it goes on and on and on. He comes into town. He's a stranger. He solves whatever issue's going on. If the town is being beset by bandits and robbers, he takes care of those bad guys. If there's a damsel in distress, he saves her. But what does he do at the end? He doesn't stay and have a life with the woman he saved. He doesn't stay and be buddy with the men in the town that he saved. He sets them up for future success, all of them, and then he's back on his horse and he's off into the sunset to do it all over again somewhere else, where he comes in as a nameless guy. He's not looking for a pat on the back. He's not looking for congratulations. He's not looking to, to get the bag of silver that they're going to give him or whatever. He just comes in and he does what he knows is morally right, and then he moves on. It's very selfless acts. And it also, you're talking about how the Western kind of reflects Catholic life and stuff. And I was also towards the tail end of the heyday of Roy Rogers, and there were a couple other famous TV cowboys and stuff. But you could be a member of the Roy Rogers Riders Club, and when you became a member, there were certain rules that went along with that, right? And it's so cool because if you follow the rules of being a Roy Rogers Rider Club member, you're probably going to wind up being a fairly good Christian or Catholic as well. The rules were to be neat and clean, to be courteous and polite, to always obey your parents, to protect the weak and help them, to be brave but not take chances, study hard and learn all you can, be kind to animals and care for them, eat all your food and never waste any, love God and go to Sunday school regularly, and always respect our flag and country. I mean, if you can accomplish that, you're doing all right, and you're a fairly good person, So there is certainly that those similarities in that similar tract of being a good old cowboy and being a good old Christian. You take care of the weak, you love God, you respect folks, you listen to your elders, and all that sort of fun stuff. So it certainly is. Yeah, I mean so that's why kids like me, you grew up, you wanted to be a cowboy. Not necessarily because of all the rough and tough and stuff they got into, but because they just seemed like really good guys, but also really cool guys. Because that's the thing.
No,
like sometimes
you wanted to dump that 45-70 as fast as Chuck Connors did it in the Rifleman. I'll tell you that.
Well, that did factor in, and we used to practice that in the neighborhood. But still, there was also that idea that you could be really cool, and you could use a Colt 45 and stuff, and yet here you are, you're being looked at as a good guy and a positive role model. So I don't know. It was a great way to grow up. I will tell you that.
Well, yeah, we have this another central theme of Catholicism and we've talked about it here before, suffering.
Mhm.
And suffering is central to both the Western hero's journey and the Catholic understanding of our own basic human condition, right?
Yeah.
Now, like you said, and the cowboy, he's either wounded in body because he's walking around with 47 bullet holes in his kneecap, or he's wounded in spirit, right?
Yeah.
I think of Unforgiven with Clint Eastwood, right?
Classic.
Oh, it's so good. He hasn't been a good guy.
No.
I mean, he to say the least, he hasn't been a good guy. He's wounded, he's scarred, he's broken spiritually, right? And that kind of reflects the suffering inherent of the world we live in.
Sure.
Right. But whenever, I can't remember the guy's name, but when he comes up to him and he's telling Clint Eastwood's character about, hey, they murdered that girl real bad, and he talks about how he cut her up and all this other.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, we need a guy like you, or I'm going to go get him, or something. At that point, Clint Eastwood is just kind of resigned to wallowing in his despair, right? Just, I'm going to stay this lonely old jerk face, very similar to how he was in Gran Torino, right? Wife died,
sure.
just leave me the hell alone, get off my lawn.
Yeah.
And he's content to just sit there and suffer, right? But we know as Catholics that suffering is not meaningless. It's redemptive. Christ's suffering on the cross transformed the meaning of human suffering, and it makes it a path to our sanctification. Now, this cowboy and the way he endures his suffering becomes kind of this symbol of our soul's journey through all the different trials in life, where we've got pain, we've got hardship, we've got loss. But all of those things are opportunities for grace. Right? And it's and so the wounds, literal or metaphorical, his deeper scars, the ones you can't see, where he's spiritually suffering, reflect Christ's passion, which can be healed and redeemed.
Mhm.
And then you have this tension, especially as Catholics, between freedom and responsibility.
Mhm.
So we've got this free will, and then we have divine grace. There's this, the cowboy will struggle between his personal freedom. I just want to roam from town to town and live under the stars and ride off into the sunset. But also, like you said, he walks into that town and he sees the robber barons and the bandits, and he's like, I can't just walk away and let this stand. It gets into his craw. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, as Catholics, freedom, the free will that God gave us, it's not an end in itself. It's just a means to participate in the cosmic drama of the divine life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the cowboy's choices that he makes are at their very core an ontological decision. They're movements towards something deeper, in participation with God's creative act, or if he's the outlaw, towards the disorder of sin.
Mhm.
When we turn that back around, we have to look at it that it's just a small piece of where we are. Every single choice we make comes with a hefty amount of responsibility.
Sure.
As Catholics, when we choose to stand against a fallen world's nature or a violation of God's commandments, even in our own lives, even when we're like most people who are converting to the church later in life, they come with sacrifices, right? Like we talked about last week on the show. Your mom, father, spouse, kids, siblings, friends, peers, colleagues. You risk losing them. You risk the consequences that come with it. And you have to accept responsibility. Yes, I chose God over something temporal in this world. Or I chose hell because choosing God was going to cost me more than I think I could bear in this world. Now, the whole thing just got me thinking, and like I said, we watched Western after Western after Western, and every single one of them had that same theme. You're this lost, broken, separated from graced individual, and then you're faced with a choice. And that choice is going to lead you to or away from God. It's going to lead you to or away from redemption. It's going to lead you to or away from salvation and sanctification. So, yeah, that's how I ended up at that conclusion that Catholicism is one big Western. But maybe that's why it feels so true. And that maybe that's why we're drawn to Westerns, because the truth is a Western.
Yeah. And the, with the Westerns, the good guy, nothing came easy. He struggled, just like same thing with Catholicism. There's nothing easy about Catholicism. It is a daily struggle to get up and do the right thing and continue to do that. And you said it at the beginning, how like you even struggled sometimes back in the day, like, I'm too far gone to be saved. I've screwed up too much to be saved. And, and there are people who do feel the way. And I've had people tell me that. And I say, man, what a cop out, because then they use that as a reason to continue on their less than stellar ways, if you will, and And I think about, like, as I described the cowboy in the Western, the good guy, that, man, he's got his flaws. He drinks too much, he gambles, he gets into fist fights and stuff. But when he saw somebody who needed him, when he saw a wrong, he went in there and fought for the good. You know what I'm saying? So and he could have easily, I mean, obviously these are TV shows, these are movies, but the guys we're talking about could have easily at any point said, I'm too far gone. I'm just going to go to the dark side. I'm going to be one of these guys who runs into town and robs the bank and runs out of town on my horse and hides up in the hills and blah, 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 but instead he'd go into the town and he'd chase out the bank robbers. He'd save the woman who was being harassed. He'd do all those things. And then he'd have a drink and do some gambling at the local saloon. I mean, he's still human, but he never got to that point of, I'm too far gone. I can't be redeemed, And so he did the right thing because, and again, that goes back to what you had mentioned that I say all the time, that we're born with this knowledge of God. And I think that's true and that's why at some point, regardless of where your life is headed, regardless of what mistakes you've made, you're always pulled back towards at least attempting to do the right thing, or to reflect on and decide what is the right thing. It's rare that somebody is just 100% bad and they do nothing about it. At the very least, there's going to be some guilt associated with it or something of that nature, but so that's the cowboy, man. He's like, we struggle every day to decide to go out there in the world and be good to others and to help people and to go to church and to receive the sacraments and to say the rosary. And so we struggle with those things. And the hero in the cowboy movie would struggle sometimes, I'm sure, to do the right thing. But yet something was pulling at him. Something was telling him, yeah, I got to do the right thing. It's the same thing with, so good old Clint Eastwood. I mean, you talk about flawed characters. I mean, there's a lot of times in his movies he could be seen as like borderline being the bad guy, but at the
slightly
at the right
sociopathic.
moment. Exactly, right? But when it came down to it, when push came to shove, he would do the right thing, and he'd save the damsel in distress. He'd stop the bank robbery. He'd do whatever, there was that internal struggle, but good willed out and good won. And it's the same for us today. And hopefully when we struggle, the good wills out. The day you don't want to say the rosary, hopefully you push past it and you say the rosary. You don't want to get up and go to church because it's a beautiful sunny day. I'd like to just hop in a boat and go fishing. Hopefully the good that's tugging at you is gonna say, no, you know what? I can take a day off of work later in the week and go fishing. Today it's the Lord's Day. I'm going to go to church.
Every single story in the Western genre is about redemption in one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, go as far as looking at 3:10 to Yuma. Now that one had a great remake, by the way, with Christian Bale and
it did.
Russell Crowe. Oh, such a great remake. Even in the end, we've known from the very beginning Russell Crowe was a bad man, right?
Yeah.
He did have a really cool pistol though, with that crucifix on the ivory handle. That was pretty slick.
Nice. That was nice.
But in the end, what did he do? He redeemed himself partially, right? Because Christian Bale ends up dying, and he died trying to get Russell Crowe on the train. But there was something that changed. Oh, they killed this guy I've grown to respect. All my old gang killed this guy I've learned to really like. So I'll put myself on the train to finish his journey for him. And he jumps on the train. And of course, we know he's going to escape again. That's why he whistled for the horse and it started following him. Right.
Yeah.
But most of the time, a Western's ending is ambiguous or unresolved, or it's sad.
Sure.
Right. But this reflects the Catholic understanding that the final fulfillment of our existence lies beyond this life. So the final fulfillment of that cowboy's journey is going to lie beyond the last page of that book. It's going to lie beyond the credits rolling of that movie, right?
Yeah.
So the cowboy, like the soul, moves ever closer to the horizon, but the fullness of his journey can only be completed in eternity. So the cowboy's journey, the cowboy's life, is a reflection of our return to the creation or to the source of our creation, right? Where all things are made new in this divine embrace.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so it's kind of like a circular logic, but it becomes this kind of a metaphysical drama that where we have the deepest truths of Catholic ontology with really good storytelling in the Western genre. Because and the reason that storytelling is so compelling and why we love it so much and why we model almost all of our entertainment media off of the Western model is because it's the one thing that resonates most with people.
Yeah.
And when it resonates, there's a reason for that that resonation, and it's because it's true. We feel it on a deeper level, which is what I've been saying about Catholicism since I became Catholic. Before I was even fully into the church, I went to mass. That was it. I went to mass, and while I was there, I walked out of there feeling, yo, what the hell just happened to me? Something happened.
Yeah.
I gotta go back. I'm not gonna name him, but just before we sat down to do this show, a friend of mine messaged me, and he's very popular, very successful. Almost everybody in the US knows his name.
Mark
He
Wahlberg.
he messaged me, and he goes, by the way, I've been going to mass, even just to observe. And so I asked him, I said, well, what have your observations been? He said, well, I'm going back.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like,
that's awesome.
That's exactly how it happened for me.
Yeah. No, you make it a point a few minutes ago about how, as Catholics, we know that there's something more, there's something beyond this, something we're striving for. It's not, and it's the same thing, like I mentioned with those Western movies, the hero doesn't stay around in town and collect his reward and hang out there because he knows there's something else waiting for him. And so the last scene is always him getting on his horse and slowly riding out of town. It's the equivalent of us, like not sitting on our laurels, not saying, hey, I did something great here, I'm done, that's it, I'm finished. We know that
I'm gonna sit here and be the mayor of the town.
Right, exactly. You're not going to do that because it's not about that. Yeah, while you're here, you do what's right and you do your best. But we know that there's something so much greater waiting for us over that next mountain range, so to speak. And so it's right. That's why you're right about those Westerns really portraying in an offbeat sort of way that that Catholic life and that Catholic style of living. That it's not, okay, I've accomplished this one thing, so now I can just stop. You keep going because the ultimate prize, the ultimate reward is definitely waiting for you farther down the line. And that's what we do.
Even if Gary Cooper came really close to settling down with Grace Kelly.
Exactly. Right? So close.
So close.
Right there.
What was that? High Noon?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. That was a good flick too.
There's just so many good ones. It's it's an amazing. I'm glad you brought that up today about these Westerns and stuff. I actually have in my hallway. I have, because I'm a collector of all things.
You got a stuffed cowboy.
No, but I do, but that's a whole other story.
Totally different purpose. We're not talking about that right now.
No, but I have in my hallway. I have I don't. Also, when I was a kid, there would be lobby cards. So they weren't the movie posters, but they were these. I think they're 18 by 12. They're cardboard, and they would the studios would send them to the theaters, and they'd have them in smaller frames throughout the place, advertising this upcoming movie or whatever. And there were only made like one set for every theater that was showing it. So most of these are limited to like 3, 4, 5, 600 sets of these. So I have a lobby card from Hang 'em High, which is right there.
Nice.
My boy Clint Eastwood, right there. It's in a hallway, and I pass it every day, and I'm like, all right, Clint, do it, brother. so yeah, I mean, these stories, they have an effect on you. They have a positive effect, because I think that we strive to be the hero in those movies, and for the right reasons, not the wrong reasons, for the good that they did.
Well, like you said, it's relatable, right? This guy's all screwed up, you know. Nobody likes the hero that's perfect.
No.
Like, I mean, look at Lord of the Rings, okay? Even the Lord of the Rings is a Western at its core.
Yeah.
Aragorn, come on. He is the flawed, he's the damaged, he's the reluctant drifter. He's a ranger out in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
And he does not want the power that he has.
Yeah.
Because he feels like the failings of his ancestors are going to be the failings of him, because it's in his blood. He carries the same blood that his ancestor did, who failed to destroy the ring.
Mm.
And then he ends up, you know, coming on in. All right, the king's going to return now. He can't resist, but actually doing it, because he sees a cause greater than himself. But the whole time he struggles internally.
Yeah.
You know, the only difference is that Tolkien completes the journey of eternity in that allegory, because he becomes king. He gets crowned, right?
Mm-hmm.
He becomes king in the end. Good finally destroys evil. And so he completes that entire arc that's usually left off right there at the end of a Western, where, well, I've been drifting on the high plains. I might as well keep being a high plains drifter.
Exactly.
You know, and you never know if he's going to come back around. You never know if you're ever going to see that guy again. He just rides off.
That's true, but that's another part. That's another part of it that really ties in. Is that why does he ride off? Because he had no intention of being crowned king, so to speak. He had no intention of being seen as the hero, and that's the thing. Like, why?
Because it's not over.
Because it's not over. But that's the thing. But why? But why are you doing what you do? If you're doing it for the accolades, if you're doing it to be made sheriff or whatever, or to be hoisted on everyone's shoulders as a hero, perhaps you're doing it for the wrong reasons. You know, your motivation isn't where it should be, you know. And so he drives off, because he hops off on his horse and goes off in the sunset, because that's not what he did it for. He didn't do it to be called the town's hero. He did it because
there's
it was
humility in it. There's that lesson of humility. Like, I don't care about you giving me a slap on the back. I just did it because it was the right thing to do. Now leave me alone. I got to go wander around in the desert again.
Exactly. And that's again, I mean, it's such a great metaphor for our life as a Catholic. You know, you do things because they are the right thing to do, not because of the possible reward. And that's you know what I mean? So it fits all around. It really does. And again, like you several times, that, you know, it's usually they're relatable because they're flawed. Because I can't, you know, it's like when I was a kid growing up, and you'd see prayer cards and things like that of the saints, and I thought, I will never be a saint, because the pictures at that point where the guy, he's in his, you know, he's a Franciscan, he's a Dominican, he's whatever, so he's in the proper garb, he's always got a halo, he's looking up to the heavens.
He lives in a monastery.
He lives in a monastery. The light of God is shining upon him. There are doves circling him and everything. I'm like,
and you're like, I live in Jersey, surrounded by other, you know, people in New Jersey.
Surrounded by good
fellas. Out. I'm surrounded by good fellas
but that's the thing.
But random seagulls.
But I thought, you know, saints were these people who were selected and sent here by God, and to perform this particular task, and they lived their lives perfectly, flawlessly, and here I am, I'm 10, I'm 11, 12, and I already know I've sinned and everything like that. So obviously I'm out of the running to be a saint. But then as you get older and you get more involved in your faith and things like that, you realize, man, every saint was a sinner, you know?
Right.
And
But then you look at saints like Maximilian Kolbe, and you're like, well, they were thrust into these extreme situations, and he made the
Sure.
choice to sacrifice himself
Yeah.
to save someone else.
Yeah.
And we're looking around going, the most extreme situation I've seen in the past 20 years is gas prices got super high.
Well,
You
yeah.
know, like,
But you know
but
what?
it does lead us to this discovery
Yeah.
later on, like you said, when we mature in our faith.
Mhm.
Sainthood is not defined by these climactic events. It's not defined by this selfless act that came out of seemingly nowhere, and because the perfect opportunity arose in these extreme situations, like with
Sure.
Maximilian Kolbe, where he sacrificed himself. They're in the small, insignificant, everyday actions.
Yeah. Yeah, for most of us, that's the truth. You know, because if you think about it, I mean, you could have a mountain placed in front of you, a hill, or a pebble. You're still expected to get past it, to get over it.
Mhm.
Now, the level of fight that it takes to accomplish that, that's that's not really the concern here. That's not really what's being focused on. Are you going to do it? Because there are people that have the pebble put in front of them and say, that's too much for me. I can't get over that. And they turn around, you know? So, no
Or
matter
why should
what,
I even do that? It wouldn't matter anyway. Makes no
that's
difference.
the other thing. What is it going to matter if I get over this pebble? I'm not really accomplishing anything. And that's such a wrong attitude to have. Is that, you might be that person like Maximilian Kolbe who has that mountain put in front of you and you've got to climb it. Or you might be the person who has just a series of 50 pebbles put in front of you. You're expected to accomplish that, to get it done, to get over those pebbles. This is the
Maximilian
same way.
Kolbe sacrificed his life. What did I do? I gave 500 homeless people a few bucks whenever I ran into them.
Because that's what you were called to do.
That's the opportunity that was placed in front of you.
Exactly. And so you don't squander opportunities, right?
Right.
So
It's the
you're
small things that actually matter when they're done with the
yeah,
right state of heart. You
exactly.
know,
Yeah.
imagine, I would imagine that Colby would not be a saint right now if he says, well, if he actually turned around and said, well, don't worry, I'm going to take that guy's place so that everybody thinks I'm great.
And I will say this though, because if you are put in that position, like Maximilian Kolbe, and God bless him, I can
Oh,
only
he
hope
did.
to someday have. Yeah, he did. I can only hope to one day have a, a, a thousandth of the strength and heart and soul that this guy had, and still has, actually. But
A huevo.
so I'm not gonna, yes, so I'm not gonna make excuses for people who have very small things put in front of them. But sometimes you can easily overlook those things. And I'm not like patting myself on the back or anything like this. But I look back to, and we've talked about it before, when I try to help out homeless people in Philadelphia. But the very first time it was placed in front of me, I was taking the same highway into Philadelphia that I took every single day for months and months and months. And there was an accident, and so we had to be detoured off onto some side streets in a really bad part of the city. So that's the only reason I wound up where I was. And I'm driving by, and I'm going through this underpass, and there's a homeless guy there. Now, I've seen homeless people before, you know, and I've driven past them. And I'm thinking to myself, that poor bastard. I hope things turn around for him. But instead, on this one occasion, it just bothered me. It bothered me. I got to work and I'm thinking, is that guy okay? Is he safe right now? Did he eat today? It just ate at me and ate at me and ate at me. And so I could have just said, you know what, bud, you could pray for him, just let it go. There's a million other guys like him out there. I'm sure he's finding his way through the world. Somebody's watching after him. He's getting a free meal somewhere, whatever. But no, it bothered me to the point where I started that project that I still have going on, where I fill up my little bags of food and gift cards and toiletries and anything else I can think of, and brand new shoes and things of this nature. And I go and I seek out these people and I try to help them as best that I can. And see, but that's the thing. So I could have said, okay, I saw a homeless person as I was driving to work. Big deal. There's a lot more like him out there, and he's fine. He was upright. He was okay, But I knew that there was something else to it. I knew that there was something else I was being called to do to help not only him but others like him. So that's the thing. Sometimes you can very easily overlook the little things, what I called the pebble before. You can just keep on driving. You can just keep on going. Somebody else will take care of it. Somebody else will fix it. Somebody else will address the situation. And have I solved the homeless problem in Philadelphia? Not even close. But there's, a few dozen, a couple hundred, whatever people in Philadelphia who do have that memory of this guy coming along and for a day making their life a little better, helping them out, giving them some gift cards so they could eat for the rest of the week, whatever it was. But that's what I was asked to do then. And I could have easily have just said, no, that's not what I was asked to do. I saw a homeless guy, big deal. Everyone sees homeless guys every day. But it planted that seed inside of me. It bothered me to that extent that I had to do something about it. So we're presented with those opportunities on just about a daily basis. And what are you doing about it? You can't say, when you're in the grocery store and there's a little old lady reaching for the top shelf because she's trying to get that macaroni and cheese box, and you're like, I got to get out of here. I got to be somewhere in 10 minutes. And so you pretend you don't see her struggling, Okay, that was your opportunity that day. That's what I'm saying. You know what I mean? Those opportunities are in front of us.
Or you're behind someone in the checkout line and you see them, they get their items or they get their card declined because they're just a few bucks short, Yeah. Or like you see that mom, she's got to go put the eggs and the milk back.
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong. I'm going to be totally honest here. If I look down and she's got a ton of junk food, cookies and candies, and my card got declined, but then she starts to go put the milk back, I'll sit there and wait. You go ahead and go put that milk back, and then pay for this. I'm not helping you, right? You're choosing your own destruction here. I know it sounds mean, but that's just the way it is.
That's true.
But when you see that, they're counting out their change, and they're like, I don't have enough. That's fine. I got you this time. Don't worry about it.
Exactly.
That's one thing I love about my wife is my wife does that a lot. She'll be standing there in line at the grocery store and the person in front of her, take this off, take that off, take this off. Well, my wife, usually the cashier will just sit it to the side. So my wife will be like, go ahead and just ring these up. And then she'll pay for those real quick. And then she'll catch the person walking out before they leave. Here, I paid for these. Go have a good day.
Yeah.
And I say that my wife does it, and my wife does it more than me because I'm not the type that likes to go into the grocery store. So usually, I don't have the opportunity to do it because I refuse to go inside the grocery store when if I can tell it's going to be packed, which is usually after mass on Sundays. I'm like, you go ahead, babe. I'll wait here in the car with the kids.
Exactly.
I love being the guy, I'll watch the door to make sure there's nobody going to come in and rob the place. But you can go on ahead. But no, it's those little tiny things. You didn't change the world when you paid for that old lady's eggs or for that mom's milk.
No.
But you changed her life that day in that moment.
Exactly.
And it's stupid. It's small. It cost you $3. It meant nothing. but it meant
Yeah.
everything to that person. It's those little tiny opportunities
Yep.
that build up sainthood.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying if you do enough of them, you become a saint. That's not what I'm saying. But it's just like anything. The more you do it, the more of a habit it becomes. So the more you exhibit Christ's love in your life, the more exhibiting Christ's love in your life becomes a habit for you. And that's how you become a saint.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the key too about it becoming a habit, because we live in a world where we are so wrapped up in what's going on in our own lives. We're so wrapped up in ourselves. Like, more often than not, when you're in line and there's the person in front of you who's struggling to pay for the milk and eggs, you don't even notice it, because you look down and you say, oh man, I just got this 125 pair of Nikes, and look, I scuffed them as I was going down the aisles here. And that's your focus. That's what you're worried about. So you don't even notice.
Oh, come on. Why does everybody's card have to get declined? I've got stuff to do. I'm in a hurry.
Right. Yeah, that's what becomes
Of course, I
important to you.
had to get behind the one lady that's going to count out
Yeah.
her change to pay for this,
Right.
This pack of meat. God.
Right. Exactly.
Why couldn't I just chosen another line?
Yeah, where your mind should be going to, this poor woman that she's counting out her pennies. That she's, thank God she found another nickel in the parking lot as she was walking in, because she can now get that carton of eggs or whatever. We don't think about that. We think of, how is this negatively impacting me that I have to stand here behind her? I mean, it's the world we've created. It's a very self-absorbed, selfish, self-serving kind of a world.
By the way, that is 100% me when the person wants to have a conversation with the cashier. Why did this have to happen to me?
That's a different.
Just
that's
pay
a
for
different
your stuff
story,
and get out.
That's a different story.
It's even worse when the cashier wants to have a conversation when I think they're making small talk, though.
Yeah.
Hi, how are you? I'm good. How are you? And then they dive into their life story like, crap.
Now you're stuck.
Now I'm stuck.
You have to feign interest.
Yeah. And I suck at that. All my effort of feigning interest is like wasted on doing the show with you. So by the time I'm done, I've got nothing left.
You're all burned out.
I'm all burned out. But no, seriously, that's exactly what it is, man. We forget about the struggles of other people because we're so caught up in our own that we don't even realize that it's an opportunity for us.
They're all, I'm telling you, they're nonstop. It's like, when I tell the story sometimes about like some of the situations I saw in the city and stuff, and I'd see a guy who's rushing to his meeting while he's shoving a sandwich down his throat, and he's in his $3,000 Italian suit, and he's on the phone, and he's crumbling up the last paper from his lunch, and he just throws it to the side, and he hits a homeless person who's asleep over a subway grate. Never even noticed the person was there, because he's so wrapped up in I got to get to this meeting in 5 minutes because there's $1 million deal on the table. So wrapped up in himself. And that I think above all else is what bothers me so much about it, that we can ignore suffering, we can ignore pain, we can ignore the plight of Christ, honestly, because that person sleeping on that subway grate represents Christ. And we can just throw a Burger King wrapper on top of them because they mean nothing to me. I don't even see them there. And how many times Christ is right there in front of us and we ignore him. We refuse to see him. That's what drove me on that first day when I saw the guy in the underpass. I'm thinking to myself, I just drove past Christ laying in filth underneath a bridge. And that ate at me and ate at me and ate at me. So I had to do something. But again, every day there's so many opportunities, so many that are presented to us, and how many of them we ignore, and how many we just simply miss because we're so wrapped up in ourselves.
You're making a habit of having the perfect closing, so I'm not even going to try to respond to that in the next 35 seconds we have for the show. So yeah, what Ed just said, think on it.
Exactly.
We will see you tomorrow. That's the end of the show. God bless you. Later.
God bless everybody.